Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the first workshop during Love Liberal Arts Week. We're just going to take a minute for everyone to come into the Zoom room. Glad to have you. I hope everybody managed to get over to Sparks today for hot chocolate. All right. Well, it looks like our incoming students have slowed down, so we'll get started to be mindful of everybody's time. But welcome everyone again to Love Liberal Arts Week, to the Careers in Romance Languages panel. My name is Katie Wysocki. I am the director of the Career Enrichment Network and excited to welcome wonderful guests from both our faculty and our alumni base to celebrate careers in Romance languages, share some helpful career ideas and out of the classroom experiences and great advice as any of you are considering these majors or minors. Um, Feel free at any time for our students. We are in a webinar, but you are always welcome to use our chat or to give questions in the Q&A. We welcome those questions. It kind of looks like might need to do that in the chat at this point, but I will keep an eye on that during our whole presentation and make sure to get your questions involved. So to get us started, let's see who's here. So today, we're going to start with our wonderful faculty champions who are always very supportive of our office. So Dr. Lauren Halberstadt is an associate teaching professor focused on teaching a variety of courses in Spanish and linguistics. She earned a dual title PhD in Spanish and language science from Penn State University. Lauren's research takes in an interdisciplinary approach, investigating topics on bilingualism, social linguistics, psycholinguistics, and languages in contact. And you're testing my speaking ability here with these words, Lauren. Um, she received an MA in Spanish linguistics and 3 BA degrees in Spanish, Italian, and global and international studies from here at Penn State. In addition to her academic experience, she has taken on administrative responsibilities such as welcoming international students to Penn State, taking students abroad, and connecting with alumni. Whether at home or abroad, Lauren is driven to work toward increasing global experiences and intercultural competency in the Penn State community. So thank you, Lauren, for being here. Dr. Heather McCoy has directed Penn State's basic language program since 2004 and served as director of undergraduate studies for a decade. A specialist in French for special purposes, Dr. McCoy empowers students with language skills needed for diverse professional paths. She is the co-author of Parlons Affairs, a business French textbook. And although my 6 years of French will fail me now, she is also the author of an advanced text in French for global health. So Heather, I apologize for not saying the full title. We are so excited to have you both here and also wanted to introduce our two alumna. Kylie Kreitz is the currently works in diversity, equity, and inclusion at I meant to ask you how to say this, Kylie. DeBevoy in Plimpton law firm in New York, where she helps to create a more inclusive workplace for her colleagues. She graduated from Penn State in 2022 with a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish, a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, and a minor in WGSS. Before starting her current role in DE&I, and after graduating from Penn State, she worked at Third Bridge Group, recruiting consultants. She is excited to share her journey and insights on how a language degree can support your career goals. We are so excited to have you here. Julia Sykes is an international program specialist with the Commercial Law Development Program in the Office of the General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Commerce, working on the Cyber and Telecommunications team. Prior to working in CLDP, Ms. Sykes worked for UNESCO and Anti-Racism and Anti-Discrimination Initiative globally. Her previous work experience spans project management, crisis response, and advocacy initiatives, and includes managing a coalition of refugee serving organizations across the state of Illinois, leading a refugee response program in Krakow, case management for immigrants accessing social services in Chicago, and managing a large-scale COVID vaccine and testing centers across Chicago. Ms. Sykes completed a Boren Fellowship in Brazil and was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic. Ms. Sykes holds a Master's of Public Policy and a Master of Social Work from the University of Chicago. She received BAs in Latin American Studies, Global Studies, and Spanish from Penn State Schreier Honors College. She speaks Spanish and Portuguese. So we are so excited to have you all here, and our students in attendance, thank you for taking the time to be here as well. We wanted to dive in a little bit and do an overview of the resources that are available here at Penn State, but also give lots of time to hear from our guests and their experiences, and allow you to ask questions in what you're considering, whether it be the major or minor, or specifically from our alumni and how they're using their degree and how they're seeing success in the skills that are truly coming from that experience here at Penn State. So, like any good career services person, I'm going to talk a little bit about why these experiences are important and how they're going to be helpful for you. We're going to allow our two faculty to share a little bit about their departments, and we are going to dive into that Q&A panel. And again, feel free to ask any questions. So we follow the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE, is our professional organization here in career services. And every year they do a survey of employers engaged with hiring recent grads for internships as well. And these are the top skills that we see them seeking. Problem solving continues to be number one in what they're looking for in their hires. Teamwork, communication, strong work ethic. And what I like to pull out is these are soft skills that are learned across all of our liberal arts degrees, in the classroom, out of the classroom. And as liberal arts majors, we excel at these in associating with employers. I always have employers coming to me saying, I love the skills and the foundation your students have in a variety of majors, because your focus on analyzing data, having a global perspective, engaging in out of classroom experiences, having leadership roles, alongside the wonderful education you're getting in the classroom. So these are the top skills we want to be focusing on and considering when we look at any major here at Penn State, and how that is promoted on our resume, in an interview, and in our job search, that allows us to be competitive. And in our office, the Career Enrichment Network is here to help you to understand that and self-reflect and be competitive in your resume, your interviews, with one-on-one career coaching whenever you're ready for that. You are getting a variety of these skills in the classroom work. You are engaged every day as much as you don't want to be at times with the writing and the analyzing of data and reading, working in teams. As I've heard some horror stories in class projects, right? But that truly is a foundation of you being able to answer an interview question in the future of, tell me about a time you worked in a group. What was your role? What was the result? How would you do it differently next time, right? So all of those experiences are good experiences in helping you go forward. And these are especially associated in our Romance languages too, in the group work, in the projects, and learning together a new language, and advancing your skill set. So we focus on out of the classroom as well, and that's where we can come in to be helpful in helping to manage all of the opportunities and how they become a reflection of you and competitive in your application, whether it be to grad school or a full-time job or a fellowship. We encourage all of our students to engage in research and internships, education abroad. Volunteer work can be just as valuable. Part-time jobs, we love part-time jobs and helping you to build those soft skills and problem solving and teamwork, as well as all of the great organizations here on campus that allow you to be a leader and get involved in a mission and a goal that then translates into your work. So what I love about the Romance languages is these are taken into consideration and opportunities are available to you to excel and expand on your experiences and knowledge. and helping you to go forward and really advance in your own career. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Halberstadt. Obviously, through all of this, our office, the Career Enrichment Network, is available to kind of reflect and go forward. And your academic advisor is also a great resource in considering what makes sense with your curriculum. But there are great people within the departments too to help you out in what you're exploring. So, Lauren.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I teach classes on primarily Spanish and linguistics, and I speak Italian, and I lead an embedded course to Spain and Italy. I see some names of current and former students in attendance, so make sure you ask really thoughtful questions of our alumni here. They're super smart. Yeah, thanks for the shout out, Alana. Alana is in the picture there in the top. I don't know if we can see her. Where are you? Oh yeah, she's right behind the girl in the green dress in the middle. So hey to Alana. I think one of the big things that we do in our department, and I'm sure Heather can agree, as well as, you know, the other languages in our college, is that we create transferable skills. So what we hear back from our alumni and what we know is that it's not just the ability to speak the language that you get at the end of the day, but it is that pairing with the language with cultural understanding, global competency, a variety of other skills, you know, navigating diverse environments that allow you to really excel in the workplace. And it's thinking about how you put those into words on your resume and you parlay those linguistic skills in new ways that help you then grow and benefit, and that's what you learn. So for example, in the pictures, these are students I traveled with, and the top picture, we're in Italy and we're in Tuscan hillside town, and that's what I think you think happens, and it really does, because that is also the good stuff. But another thing is in the picture below, that's a group of students who I took them to a Chinese restaurant. So they were ordering authentic Chinese dishes in a menu that was completely in Italian. And at that table, only one person was an Italian speaker, right? The others are studying Spanish or French. And they had to think about, okay, if I ordered this type of ravioli, what type of authentic Chinese dumpling is it really referring to? And so what that does is then it takes, you know, yeah, you have these amazing language talents, but how do you apply them to diverse environments? We have an alum who works as a consultant, and has a Spanish degree, but he was working with teams in Italy and in India. And so by having that cultural and language background, he could navigate some of the conflicts that rose up with people with different expectations. And so I think that in addition to what you think is quintessential from Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, right, reading Dante and Quixote and studying linguistics in the lab or in the field, you'll also get these real practical, real world skills. And then the next slide is just a screenshot, which I'm sure if you guys want to see these, you know, take more time with them, Katie can share. But the idea is that, you know, we're seeing people go into all sorts of different work environments, of course, you know, teacher or translator or interpreter, but also like advisors in different spaces. And as Kylie and Julia will tell you, right, you can really parlay this into different spaces. You know, and people are pairing this with other majors, right? In communication, in technology, and in business. And the employers are very vast, right? Our students are getting recruited from all over to fit their areas of expertise. So thinking about how you take the skills that you're learning in class, and instead of thinking them as extra or soft skills, really making them pointed and how they help you stand out in the crowd. That is what my recommendation would be. And, you know, I'm happy to take questions later more on these topics.
Great. So I'm Heather McCoy, as I was introduced. And just to tell you a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of kind of language majors. There was a time, like in ye old days, when I was a major, most people that were French majors went on to be higher ed, master's, PhD programs, or teachers. And that has really, really changed. The way that we market our major to undergrads is we say French and. So what are you going to combine French with? And so for us, it's really about How can students leverage the power of their primary major along with French to be prepared for a variety of careers? As you well know, in your Spanish and Italian and French classes, obviously you're acquiring linguistic skills, but you're also learning how to communicate. You're learning how to listen. You're learning how to interact with people from diverse contexts and background. And obviously, all employers and companies right now are talking about that kind of intercultural competence that is important, that's important to possess in order to work with a global team. Also, now more than ever, you're gaining different perspectives, ways of kind of bridging cultural understanding, and that is a very important skill and orientation to have today. One thing to tell you really quickly, coursework in the French department, we have several courses that are directed at language for the professions. So what are the competencies, what are the skills you need to be able to use French in the workplace? So we have a French for the professions class. As Katie said, I work on French for global health, and that class is really a lot of fun to teach because it draws students from a lot of different backgrounds: bio, pre-med, nursing, and then other sociology, anthropology, SMEAL. So these courses really prepare you to function linguistically in different French-speaking contexts, but they also give you kind of important cultural frames and insights that you might need to work in a francophone environment. One thing I would recommend is that you take advantage of gap year programs. Maybe you don't know what you want to do with your Spanish major, your French major. I know Spanish has an equivalent. I don't know what it's called, but French, we have the TAPIF program, teaching assistant program in France that's run by the French government, where you're assigned to be a language assistant in a French school, an English teacher. You get a paycheck, you get housing, and most importantly, you get French healthcare. So one thing that's really great about that is you encounter a lot of cultural insider knowledge from working in a country, working in the country, but also it helps you figure out maybe you want to be a teacher, maybe you don't want to be a teacher, but it's a great experience. We also have many students who've gone on to do master's degrees in France. And several of those people have parlayed that into work visas and being able to get a special training visa and work there full time. As you can see here, we have a lot of different careers that our students have gone into. Yes, education is up there, but you also see there's people working for NGOs, people working in development. We have someone in Interpol. The one that turns a lot of heads is marketing in Christian Dior. So you can see here, there are a lot of different kind of career pathways. Maybe the next slide, just to tell you really quickly. So this is a slide that shows you some of the French affiliated firms in Pennsylvania. So a lot of times when you think about working with a foreign language in your degree, you think of going to work in Spain or working in France. But know that there are a lot of international multinational corporations that are here in Pennsylvania that do have a need of students who have some linguistic abilities. And know that you don't need to be bilingual, you don't need to be fluent in order for your language skills to translate into something that's valuable for these companies. To tell you really quickly, we had a student that was a dual major, accounting and French. I'm sure you all know about the Big Four, right? So he went on an interview with the Big Four, which are these giant cattle call type interviews. He gets to the interview, and the first thing that they ask, they see the accounting on his CV, they're impressed. Immediately they ask about, why are you French major? Oh, you did study abroad. And they spent the whole interview talking about that, and at the very end, the interviewer said, if you can adapt to living in a foreign environment, in a study abroad environment, you definitely can adapt to our corporate culture. So, whether you're majoring in a foreign language just out of interest or you're doing so strategically, know that it's a very important element that is going to really attract the attention of employers. And happy to answer any questions once we're done speaking. Yep, and you can see here, as Lauren said about the Spanish flyer here, you can see that there are a diverse variety of careers here, a huge range, and that you really should, well, you're at a Career Enrichment Network event, so already big ups to you, but know that you can rely on the Career Enrichment Network to give you excellent coaching. I know both Laura and I love meeting with undergrads who have questions about career pathways. Yeah. So that's it for me. If you have any questions at the end of our presentation.
Well, thank you so much for going through all that. It's wonderful to see it, and the opportunities are so vast. And I know we're always excited by the vast, but they could be a little bit overwhelming at times too. So that's why it's good to know there's people to talk through them and those options. So I am going to stop the PowerPoint slide so we can see everybody. And the good news is I did find the Q&A was open, but Zoom keeps changing its format and hides things on me now. So to the students, please feel free to add again the questions in the Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on that. But to kick us off, I was hoping, Julia, you would start for us. How has your language degree supported your career through since Penn State?
Yeah. So I think that first of all, having the language degree has vastly opened up my job opportunities. Having knowledge of a second language, but I also studied abroad when I was at Penn State. I studied abroad for 2 semesters, and I think that that on top of the degree has demonstrated that not only did I get good grades in the classroom in my degree, but I also demonstrated success out in the field, out abroad, navigating a new environment. As Lauren mentioned, you're really thrown into it and you have to sink or swim. And so being able to demonstrate that really shows a lot from the jump. But yeah, and then being able to build upon that, I think especially with the Romance languages, once you have one, it's very easy to build upon that. So I've been able to study Portuguese since then, which has opened up even further career opportunities for me. I've been able to study French as well, and it's just built upon and it continues to build. So that's been a really great benefit of my Spanish degree.
Thank you so much, Julia. Kylie, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree with all Julia said. I also think, of course, you learn how to work with people of different backgrounds, how to understand different people's points of views, different perspectives, how to work with people who have different experiences than you've had. And also, as a recent graduate, like during the interview process, being able to show that, particularly with a dual degree, that you have a unique set of skills and a unique point of view that's been cultivated by studying your specific major and your specific language at the same time in the way that only you did. Like being able to talk about that and leverage that in an interview is super impactful, and I think really helps you stand out.
Absolutely. So well put. I appreciate that perspective. You're right. It's more than what's on your resume sometimes, and it's your ability to present it. It's your ability to articulate your skills and reflect on what you've done and what it means and what you're going to do. I say that to students all the time is that no one needs to know everything you've ever done. They want to know how it relates to them, right? And how it supports the next step. And you both really mentioned that in what you were saying. So we do have some questions coming through the Q&A. So thank you so much. Lauren, do you happen to know the Spanish equivalent of the French teaching assistant position that was mentioned?
So yes, so there is one in Spain. I know. I'm not sure what other speaking countries have that's like consistent. The one in Spain is the NACLAP, NACLAP. Alana, if you write me an email, I'll be happy to send you that link. But for those of you who are not, I can I don't know if you guys can see it if I type it in the Q&A. but it's in Spain and it's not full-time work. I have had students do it in the past, but what it does provide you is with a visa, a work visa. So in addition to working teaching English, you can also work in another space that might be relevant to you. Or my former student who lived in Ibiza, she spent a lot of time in Ibiza. So it sort of depends on how you want to, use that time. And honestly, I think it's all value added. But that's the one in Spain. There are others. I know I've had former students do it in the Dominican Republic. I don't have them off the top of my head, but if you want to, right, I can happily look. I say that to
That
Alana, who is, a former student of mine, but I'm the only Lauren in our department. For anyone else who wants to find me, it's pretty easy.
Mhm. And that would be great for us to have eventually if there's a list, Lauren.
We should
We can
come up
have
with
one.
one. Maybe
Yeah,
Heather, we can like bother some other people like Carrie and others to like get a whole language list.
that would be great. Yeah,
Yeah, I know German has an equivalent governmental program as well, so.
good to know. Good to know. We are inviting Heather to one of our career coaching meetings, so Lauren will have to put you on the docket as well to come. We're always learning as career coaches too to make sure we know as much as we can, not everything, but as much as we can. So we have one more question in the Q&A. How do you keep up with your foreign language skills after graduating and leaving formalized classes? Kylie, you're not too far gone, but how are you doing it?
Yeah, I love this question because this is actually something I've been working on in the past couple months. I definitely let it fall to the wayside as I was like job searching and figuring out how to work in the real world and like adult and all those things. So I think first it's totally natural if that happens and you can always come back to it. And now I am doing my best to listen to lots of good music in Spanish, watching TV in Spanish, and having the subtitles as Spanish language. That's something that's easy to do as you're kind of also an early career professional. Also, volunteering is great. If you move to an area that has a lot of Spanish speakers, there's so many opportunities to interact with them, to volunteer with them, and that also helps build kind of your language skills, but also your outside of work life.
Julia, you're picking up new languages as you go. So how are you doing all of that?
I echo everything that Kylie said, and um, music is a really good way. Podcasts, and then I try to stay in touch with friends that I've made from studying abroad, from living abroad, and I do a lot of voice notes with people back and forth, or calling people at random times in the day, and just as using that as a way. And I know that when I was recently graduated, I swore off reading for a long time, but now I've been able to pick back up books in different languages. Lauren, I'm sorry. But it's been fun to pick back up books in different languages also, and to actually feel like I enjoy them and can, really get into it without the burden of, lots of classes on top of me.
Well, that was definitely a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. So we have one specifically for you, Julia, and I had it on my list to ask you more about it as well. But could you tell us about your Peace Corps and your Bourne Fellowship experience too, and how that has helped after graduation?
Of course. I love talking about the Peace Corps because it was the best 3 years of my life, and it was the best decision I ever made, was joining the Peace Corps. When I was getting ready to graduate, I felt very stressed because I felt like a lot of my classmates had jobs or knew what direction they were headed. I feel like I didn't fully take advantage of the Career Enrichment Network while I was a student. And I just kind of said, well, I've heard about the Peace Corps, maybe I should apply. And I got in, and I taught Spanish literacy. Um, it typically is a 2-year commitment, but I extended for a 3rd year because I loved it so much and I really loved the project. But Peace Corps was an amazing experience, and it was a really great first job out of undergrad, because I really felt like all of the skills that I learned as a Peace Corps volunteer, I just have used all of those skills in jobs going forward. I mean, adaptability and all of those things are things that I built upon from study abroad experiences. And I was able to use my study abroad experiences as a leverage for, I've already done this before. I've already navigated a new environment. I've already been, thrown into the unknown waters and have, have survived. So but just adaptability, flexibility, navigating different cultural environments, learning to work with people who speak a different language, who have different cultural norms with you. I mean, really living with that from a day-to-day basis and working in a different culture just totally expanded my worldview and, my empathy. But anyway, I could go on talking about the Peace Corps for very long, but and then the Boren Fellowship was another opportunity that I got finishing grad school through a US government funding to study Portuguese in Brazil. So I was there for about 8 months doing intensive Portuguese study. Another really great experience, and that is how I landed the job I'm in now, working for the federal government. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also put in the chat for the students online, Penn State does have a Peace Corps recruiter. They also volunteered with Peace Corps. They're usually located with Career Services over in the Bank of America Center. So their information is there for you in the link. And I also included the Undergraduate Research and Fellowship Mentoring Office. Their director, Tina LeBrun, is doing wonderful work and doing information sessions on resources such as the Boren and Fulbright and critical language and tons of other opportunities through their search engine, one-on-one appointments to help you prepare and have very competitive applications. So I always like to promote them as well. So thank you, Julia, so much for sharing that experience. So
Can I just jump in really quickly and say
Yeah.
that for you undergrads, we have excellent, outstanding resources at Penn State for preparing you to apply to become an English teaching assistant for the Fulbright. We do something that few other universities do, and that is that we coach you through the entire process. We talk to you about your project. We help you craft your documents. And so Tanika LeBrun is also the person who's in charge of that. And definitely reach out if you're interested. Again, it's kind of a gap year project, but many students going all over the world. And every year, I think Penn State is one of the top feeder schools into the Fulbright experience. So you really should look into that, and you don't have to be like a big research person to do it. Sometimes it's about getting assigned to a school somewhere and coming up with some kind of cultural projects. So yeah, you should look into that as well.
for sure. Just a follow-up question, Julia, with the Peace Corps. How did you survive in the Peace Corps? How did you live? What was your livelihood in the Dominican Republic being a volunteer?
So with Peace Corps, you get a stipend, and the intention of Peace Corps is that you're meant to live like a local. I I think that people have different ideas of what that is meant to mean, but I did have indoor plumbing for most of my time there. But no, in regards to financially, you get a stipend, and then also part of the question I think you asked was about finding a job afterwards.
Yes, yes.
Peace Corps has stood out on my resume for every job that I've had since then. I mean, I came back during the pandemic. I was evacuated because of COVID. And I interviewed for a job at a COVID testing site, and they said, well, you're a Peace Corps volunteer, so you've managed projects before. So they just really threw me into a managerial position, and knowing that I was able to handle some of the complexities and challenges of navigating different cultural environments. There was one more, and then another thing I wanted to add is that also having done Peace Corps, I was able to get a really good scholarship for grad school. That was another big push for me. I didn't realize that would be such a big thing, but when I was applying to grad school, I got good scholarships. So yeah.
We also like to promote AmeriCorps, obviously, depending on where they are with funding, that the opportunities are available to stay domestic, and also at the end of those have funding for graduate school too. a few more specific questions. I'm guessing for the Fulbright Fellowship. The opportunities are mostly post-grad opportunities with Fulbright, as Heather said, with the gap year. I believe they're longer term, but I did just help some students with some shorter experiences. We would just have to get into the weeds of all the different opportunities available for you. And obviously, the URFM can help with that as well in doing so. So feel free to keep up with the questions. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I know I'm
Okay.
not.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I think might be valuable is if Kylie, you could offer the flip side of like being in a
Yeah.
corporate space to that, because I think sometimes we tend to go down, like we see one road and it's get pigeonholed. So what did it look like for you sort of going like the backpack to briefcase, adjustment?
Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment, but I do think, when I was starting to apply for jobs, I kind of had the same mentality of maybe not thinking that my expertise or what I studied in college would fit into a corporate environment, and that wouldn't be an avenue that I wanted to explore. And then I kind of just started taking, I didn't have the easiest job search, which I also think is normal, and I want to emphasize is totally normal that you might be searching for jobs for a couple of months after graduation, and that's okay. So that was my experience, and I was just like taking interview after interview after interview, and I eventually ended up in a corporate environment that wasn't perhaps what I wanted. I was doing recruiting, which wasn't ideal, but I learned a lot of the skills that, you need to kind of survive in a corporate environment. There's a lot of like little things and lingo and patterns of the way that people work and the structure of it that you don't learn until you're in it. So that was a hugely important step in just like me developing as a working person. And then from there, I was kind of able to step into or analyze more of, okay, I'm in corporate environment. Maybe I want to stay here. And then how can I make the corporate environment work for what I want to do? And how can I make it work for what my values are? And then that's how I started looking into DEI work. And that can be, in our current climate, that can maybe be taking different forms. And it might not be as accessible in the next couple years as it was when I started, but don't be discouraged. The roles will still be there. They might look different, but I do think that there's a place in corporate America for you to do good work, meaningful work, and yeah, I'll end it at that.
Thank you, Kylie. I appreciate that. And great question, Lauren, for sure. So I think it's a great advice for our students who are looking at graduation too right now. And I need to remind people that their first job will not be their last job, and that it is a path, and we have turns and twists, and that's okay. And it might be the best pivot, right? Or it might be you learn something about yourself and go in a different direction. So someone specifically asked what Kylie's major was. So she was Bachelor of Arts in Spanish, International Relations, and a minor in WGSS. Okay. All right. I'm just going to pivot. I love hearing from our alum here on the conversation. I just wanted to pivot to our faculty champions, as I like to call them. And what quick advice would you give for our students on the call that might be considering a language major or minor right now?
One thing I would say is, again, Career Enrichment Network is very generous in terms of students being able to study abroad. So if you're worried, first of all, you don't have to study abroad to do the major. Sometimes that's a financial obstacle or a time obstacle, depending on what your primary major is. But that I was a study abroad leader for over 10 years, taking students every summer to Besançon in France. And many students were able to completely fund their entire study abroad, but from different pots of money at Penn State. So if you're interested in study abroad, know that it's not necessarily going to be as financially challenging as it would be. In fact, some students say it was the cheaper semester based on the gouging prices of Penn State housing. But yeah, know that there, if you're, and go and speak to the DUS, Joe Bauman, I believe that's the DUS for Spanish, right, Lauren? I'm the DUS in French. Make a meeting one-on-one, ask, come and talk to us. We have a lot of insight for you. And sometimes we're just sitting twiddling our thumbs during our office hours.
Lauren, would you like to add
I would agree. So, I mean, Heather and I have both traveled with students. So I think we are really passionate about the ability to get students abroad. Kylie and I were kind of laughing earlier because when she was my student, it was in the pandemic and I was also super duper pregnant. And so we got to go to DC, which isn't quite the same as studying abroad. But, you know, having those real life and immersive experiences can bring a lot of value, even what you're doing now, like participating in things. The biggest thing I would say about adding a language major or minor is that one, we want you. We will make it work. Language majors are very flexible. We play very nicely with other majors. There's a lot of ways to make it work in the time that you have left. And number two is all of our alumni, literally every alum that we, you know, talk to, connect with, get in contact with talk about how it helps them. It helps their resume rise to the top of the pile, you know, having multiple majors now when you're having like, you know, sort of digital scans of resumes, at least in the first few rounds where it's not a human looking at it, having multiple degrees is helpful, having, you know, some sort of specialties is helpful. So I think, you know, knowing that one, we can make it work, and two, it will bring you value are the biggest reasons of all.
One thing I would add to
Absolutely.
that Lauren said that's very important is that our classes are very small. So my daughter was a poli-sci major at Penn State, and when it was time for her to ask for letters of recommendation, she didn't know any, you know, having had 400 level classes, she didn't know any of the faculty. She had been a French minor, she knew all of the French faculty. So Lauren can attest to the fact that we write a lot of recommendation letters, but moreover, it's a small, intimate environment where you really get to know your fellow majors and your faculty. And sometimes, you know, for us, it is a smaller major, usually compared to whatever the primary major is, and you have the opportunity to really take advantage of that kind of more intimate experience.
Thank you both. That's great. Kylie and Julia, I'd like to end on the question we have is what was your most valuable resource at Penn State? And I've appreciated everyone plugging those here now, but I'd also like to hear if there's one thing you might do different for our students to consider as well in our last 2 minutes. Anybody want to go first? Julia.
Yeah, I can start. I said this earlier, but I really kind of wish that I had looked more into the career enrichment network and that I had taken advantage of some of those resources. And you know, maybe they weren't as robust as they are now.
Mhm.
And you're nodding your head, so I hope that that's the truth, because the other option is that I just didn't look into them enough, and
Mhm.
which could also very well be true. So I think that you know, I could have really yeah, I feel like that could have expanded my job search and I might not have felt so lost. Also, you know, looking into more, as Heather was saying, more funding opportunities, that would have been really helpful. And then looking to the Career Enrichment Network for more internship opportunities potentially. I mean, I really took the summers as an opportunity for me to go back home to Chicago and find a part-time job there working at my local pool, because I was like, well, you know, an internship is not attainable for me. I can't do an unpaid internship, and there are funding resources available. So I wish I had looked into that a little bit more.
Thank you. Kylie, you want to end us today?
Yeah, I definitely agree, echo that Julia said about internships. I was in the same boat as a liberal arts major. I was like, I don't know what internships I even can apply to, that I have the qualifications for. Most of them that I was seeing were unpaid, so I wish I would have explored that avenue a little bit more and more gotten more of that experience while I was off for the summers. I also think one thing I wish I would have done a little bit differently was maintain more contact with my network that I built while at Penn State. A lot of my favorite professors I've lost contact with, and although it's only been a couple years and I know I could still reach out, just keeping in touch with people and keeping in touch with students that you met in classes. They might become your future colleagues, keeping in touch with your professors and just maintaining that like Penn State network, I think can be super valuable. And if you move, some cities that you move to do have alumni networks, so look into those as well.
Absolutely. Great advice. I really appreciate everyone's time and kicking us off for our Love Liberal Arts Week. We invite our students to please join us for the rest of the week. And we will get you some of the slides that were shared today so you can get to those websites. But feel free, if all you walk away from is some friendly faces and people that you can go and ask your questions to, we're excited for that too. And because we're here to help you as you navigate your future career. So thank you all so much. It was wonderful to see you. Happy Monday. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Thanks.